Fani Willis colluding with the January 6th committee. Not a surprise to anybody who's been paying attention. Nobody has faith that Fani can actually do an investigation on her own, so she got it from Liz Cheney. But we're going to go through what's happening here because Jim Jordan and some members in Congress have been asking Fani for some records because there's a problem here. If Fani did her own independent investigation, if she's somebody who did her own due diligence and really got to the bottom of this before deciding to charge Trump, why does she need evidence and records from the January 6th Select Committee? Why didn't she just get them on her own? Because she's not a federal prosecutor. She's not investigating federal crimes. She's got criminality in Georgia, and there's a RICO case in Georgia, and so we want to have her do her due diligence there. And so we're going to go through a couple letters. Jim Jordan and Congress sent one over to her. They said, hey, Fani, we've been asking for a lot of material from you. You're not giving it to us. We're going to have some problems with you here pretty soon. And then we're going to take a look at the letter that preceded that one, actually, which is where Fani was telling Jordan to go pound sand. So we're going to read this one first and then jump into the more recent one. And then we'll see what Liz Cheney says about this in the context of this, because she was really the figurehead of the January 6th Select Committee, which was illegally constituted in Congress under H.R. 503. But the problem with this, my friends, before we zoom in, we got to zoom out on this. Why is this a problem? Why is Big Fani colluding with Liz Cheney and the January 6th Select Committee problematic? Well, when you are normally under investigation, when there's a normal criminal process that's underway, when you're sitting at home twiddling your thumbs like, oh, I'm not an insurrectionist, and some partisan prosecutor wants to investigate you in a normal world without the Select Committee and without all of that, they would open up an investigation. Let's take January 6th out of it. Just take any other crime. They have to go through the judiciary in many ways to get access to you. If they want a search warrant to your data, they got to go through a judge to sign off on it. If they want to go tap your phones or pull your bank records or something, prosecutors don't have unfettered access to go do that. There are mechanisms in place to protect defendants against overreaching executives, overreaching prosecutors. We have that everywhere in this country. We have a whole justice system that's based on that. That's why we have a judge. And prosecutors don't get to do whatever the hell they want, mostly. So that is the regular situation. Prosecutor wants to go get something, got to convene a grand jury. The grand jury is supposed to be of your peers, right? They're supposed to authorize certain things, and then you go tap this and prosecute that and subpoena this and subpoena that, right? It's mechanism. There's called due process there. What happened, though, with Liz Cheney and the January 6th Select Committee? They didn't do any of that, right? They created a fake committee that was supposed to be compromised of 5 Republicans. They rejected all of the Republican nominees because Nancy Pelosi said they weren't qualified. And so she picked the Republicans. The minority party had no consultation with them at all. And they were supposed to have 13 members, 8 Dems, 5 Republicans. Never had that. We had 7 Dems, 2 Republicans. So how is that a legitimately constituted committee under their own rules, under H.R. 503? It's not. So it was illegitimate in the first place. But that being said, they were still Congress and no courts were willing to say no to them. So when they sent a subpoena, when Liz Cheney, partisan hack, along with Bennie Thompson, who might be a nice guy, I don't know, he kind of just sits there and does whatever Liz tells him. So he and Liz, they were there and they're sending all these letters out, gobbling up everything. And we read so many of these letters here. We read all of Bennie Thompson's letters, like 18 pages. Give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that. I'm from Congress. And they did, right? Everybody's like, oh crap, Congress is knocking at our door. So they gave them all of their materials and all of their records, and there was no due process there. There was no judge investigating any of this. There was no notice provided to the defense. And anybody who didn't comply with Congress, guess what happened to them? They just turned it right over to the DOJ. Take a look at Peter Navarro. Take a look at War Room. Steve Bannon. Those guys all got prosecuted because they didn't comply with Liz Cheney's stupid, illegally constituted subpoenas. But practically what happened is Liz Cheney gobbled it all up, right? She went and seized it and then kept it on display, kept it in her back pocket and gave it over to the government. Essentially, when Jack Smith came in as special counsel, here you go. When Fani Willis wants it, here you go. And so they got access to this treasure trove that was obtained outside of the properly constituted judicial mechanisms. It is antithetical to American jurisprudence. That's why it's a problem. Now, a lot of people on the left are going to say, well, who cares where it came from? They can just get it wherever they want. And they're okay having a legislative branch act as a grand jury, act as a judge and executioner, essentially. If you don't do what we want, you get subpoenaed, you violate our subpoenas, we turn you in for contempt of Congress, you get charged, you can get convicted like Steve Bannon, and may theoretically be going to jail. So that's what's happening here. That's why it's a problem. That's why when Congress looks into this, it's for the separation of powers, it's for the sanctity of the defendant. We don't want this happening in this country, unless they do. They don't care about any of those old safeguards because it's ma Trump. So now let's take a look at the letters. Enough of the laying the foundation. This is the background here. So Fani sent a letter over to Jim Jordan. We read through the first letter from Congress over to Fani Willis and the people there in Congress in Georgia. And now Fani is responding to that. And here is what that looks like. She writes this to Jim Jordan. This is from Fani Willis. Look at that cursive. How fancy. Very fancy, Fani. And she says on October 11th, she writes the following to Congressman Jim Jordan. She says, hey, Mr. Jordan, says, I am in receipt of your letter dated September 27, 2023. Says, a charitable explanation of your correspondence there, Jim, this is Fani, is that you are ignorant, of the United States and the Georgia constitutions and codes. That's pretty interesting because he's on the Judiciary Committee. He's the chairman of it. Okay. And here, as we see, they tell us a more troubling explanation, you ignoramus, is an explanation is that you are abusing your authority as chairman of the committee on the judiciary to attempt to obstruct and interfere with a Georgia criminal prosecution. Now, indeed, Jim, you confessed to this motivation. You were on Mark Levin's show in September, on September 10th, 2023. And when you were on with Mark Levin, you said to him, you were discussing one of my office's active in prosecutions. You told Mark Levin, you said, hey, Mark, quote, we're trying to get all the answers, but we're trying to stop this stuff as well. She emphasizes that in a footnote. She says, now, Jim, while you may enjoy immunity under the United States Constitution speech or debate clause, that does not make your behavior any less offensive to the rule of law. Now, as the person chosen by the citizens of Fulton County to be their district attorney, I serve them, and my team and I are exceptionally busy prosecuting Trump and the other co-defendants. They say, we've already written a letter to you, Jim, which I have attached again for your reference, explaining why the legal positions you advance are meritless. And we already read that letter too. Now, nothing you've said in the latest letter changes that fact, Jim. And as I have explained, your requests implicate significant and well-recognized confidentiality interests related to an ongoing criminal matter, as well as serious constitutional concerns regarding federalism and separation of powers. Now, Jim in Congress says to the extent that you have specific questions about the DOJ's communications that she got from their office, right? Because the first letter was, hey, Fani, give us the records. We refer you to the DOJ. So go talk to Merrick Garland about it. And to the extent that you have specific questions about our use of federal funds, which he threatened to cut off, we have provided you with extensive information and further information that you can go right here. So she just gave him a website, justice.gov/grants. That's pretty rude, to Congress. Here's a website. How about www.google.com, jerkheads? Use it. Look it up. My attached prior letter provided you with 4 noble suggested uses of your authority as chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. 1, enhancing funding for victim authority for victim witness advocates. 2, expanding funding for all types of kits. 3, supporting Credible Messengers program, which helps turn around children in trouble with the criminal justice system, and ensuring adequate funding to support our crime lab so we can deal with all of our drugs, which tests for drugs like fentanyl. Now, I would encourage you to focus your attention on those issues, which would make life better for the American people. Yeah, man, she's got some brass, man. Pretty aggressive little stand over there, Fani. And so we are seeing her signature there as well. It is a big flamboyant F for the Fani, as you'd expect. But here is what the response looks like from Jim Jordan. He tells us, on December 5th, back over to the Honorable Fani Willis, says, Dear Miss Willis, the Committee on the Judiciary continues to conduct oversight of politically motivated prosecutions by state and local officials. Now, although we were aware that your office had coordinated its politically motivated prosecutions with Jack Smith, you already knew that, and we played the clip here. I think it was Newt Gingrich who said that he thinks, he heard from a reliable source, that Fani got message from Washington, you indict him Monday, like now, like get him indicted. Otherwise, there's going to be a problem. Now, we recently learned that your office also coordinated its investigative actions with the Partisan Select Committee on January 6th. So we know that, Fani, you weren't doing this independently, right? You also got information from Jack Smith in addition to the committee. If you had evidence of a crime within Georgia, that's your jurisdiction, why didn't you go do your investigation your own? Why are you taking cues from other people who actually did the heavy lifting? Now, accordingly, they say we write to request documents related to your coordination between your office and the Partisan J6 Select Committee, which is illegally constituted also, I would say. Now, on August 24th, they say we wrote to you, Fani, and your office, requesting the production of 3 categories of documents related to the committee's oversight of the politically motivated prosecutions by state and local officials. Say we already sent you this one in August, and I'm pretty pretty sure we read all of these. The one that we just read is this one, footnote 4, to get caught up. It says, your reply letter dated September 7th, it failed to adequately address any of our requests, and it made several baseless excuses for refusing to provide the requested documents. And it's true, man. Fani, definitely has a disdain for Jim Jordan and the congressional committees. And so, as we continue, it says, we wrote again, Fani, on September 27th, explaining in detail the legal deficiencies in your position and offering as a sign of good faith to prioritize the production of certain documents so as to minimize any potential burden on your office. We wanted to play nice with you. But then you responded on October 11th, the one that we just read, rejecting our offer at accommodation and instead resorting to ad hominem attacks on the committee's oversight. And your response letter largely rehashed the same arguments that we considered and addressed in our detailed September 27th letter. And Fani, you again, in your response, you called us ignoramuses. Jim, she called you that. You again failed to produce any documents in response to our oversight requests, saying, Fani, recently, the committee became aware, now this is where we're getting good, we became aware of cooperation between your office and the partisan January 6th Select Committee. Fani, we're in possession of a letter dated December 17, 2021 that we've enclosed in this document that we're going to look at. And it's from you, Fani, to Bennie Thompson, chairman of the partisan J6 committee. And you are requesting access to congressional records that may be relevant to our criminal investigation. Oh, that's curious. You mean the same exact charge? You mean the same exact criminal investigation that Jack Smith's doing? You mean the same exact investigation that Liz Cheney did outside of the color of law, using the Congress to go cobble together your pseudo grand jury that was completely rigged? That's what you're talking about? Fani, why do you need those if you've got so much evidence? You don't. You just were copying and pasting, okay, which is all these people do. It's really true about prosecutors in general. Huge copy pasters, all right? They're paint by number people too. You ever hear a prosecutor in his trial? I mean, just pick a regular trial. Some of the ones you see on TV, they kind of showboat and stuff like that. But most prosecutors, man, it's paint by numbers. They just oh, what happened next? Oh, what'd you do next? Oh, really? What happened next? Okay, and tell me that. What happened next? The cops do most of it. And so all right, then they copy and paste their transcripts or their templates from one to the next. Anyways, you get the point. So here, specifically, you asked Representative Thompson to copy and paste his homework. Fani, man, unbelievable. For access to records, including but not limited to recordings and transcripts of witness interviews, depositions, electronic and print records of communication, and records of travel. You mean the whole case? Why didn't you do your own interviews, Fani? And it's interesting that there were recordings, because apparently all of those have been deleted now. Now, you even offered that you and your staff were eager to travel to Washington, D.C. to meet with the investigators in person, so there's no trail. We don't want to really send a lot of emails about this, of course. And to receive these records, quote, anytime between January 31st and February 25th. We're in a hurry. We got to indict him. So Jim Jordan says, all right, Fani, look. Now, although it is not clear what records, if any, you obtained in your coordination with the partisan J6 Select Illegally Constituted Committee, this new information raises additional questions relevant to the committee's oversight of your politically motivated prosecution of a former president of the United States, in addition to former senior federal officials. Now, the partisan January 6th Select Committee had troubling track record of procedural abuses and due process violations. It only solicited evidence from a select set of relevant individuals. It ignored exculpatory evidence, and it did not pursue witnesses with evidence that would not advance its partisan narrative. Footnote 10. Here's a letter from Jim Jordan to Bennie Thompson. Says, it fabricated and publicly released doctored footage that we saw where they were just inserting text messages and other things, and it cherry-picked selective information that created false and misleading public narratives. Now, Liz, to the extent that your politically motivated prosecutions are now relying in any way on records obtained from the partisan January 6th Select Committee, it only reinforces concerns about your commitment to due process and whether you have fulfilled your obligations to properly disclose this material. I just boosted the volume. Is that a little bit better? I just cranked it up just a smidge. But I want to make sure it's not overdriven. I want to make sure it's not overgrained. So I just kicked it up. Now, Article 1 of the Constitution grants Congress, quote, all legislative powers, and the Supreme Court has held that Congress may conduct inquiries into the administration of existing laws, studies of proposed laws, and surveys of defects in our social, economic, and political system for the purposes of enabling Congress to remedy them. Further, as we have previously articulated to you, Congress, quote, has authority to consider and to investigate legislative reforms to to insulate current and former presidents from state prosecutions. Now, pursuant to Rule 10 of the House of Representatives, the committee is authorized to conduct oversight. And so now we're asking you, Fani, to produce the following materials. 1. All documents and communications between the Fulton County District Attorney's Office and the Select Committee to investigate the J6 attack on the Capitol, everything that you guys talked about between these two dates. And 2. All documents and communications referring or relating to records in the possession of the Fulton County DA's office from the Select Committee to investigate the J6 attack on the Capitol. So we want it all. Please provide this as soon as possible, no later than December 19, 2023, right in time for Christmas. And we're going to get it. So in addition, we request that the request contained in our prior letters, we ask for that immediately. We don't want any more time on this. Now, as we have previously expressed, the committee is willing to work with you in good faith, Fani, to prioritize the production of your material, and this will alleviate the potential burden on your office. Fani, thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. Sincerely, Jim Jordan. And so that went over to Fani Willis. Now, here is the evidence that he ultimately attached that we can see here. This was, once again, from Fani Willis. And Fani, you can see, we have the big flamboyant F over there. Again, it matches the original at Fani on the first letter. So this is the one that she sent from the office of Fulton County District Attorney. Put it on letterhead, December 17, 2021. She says, "Hey, Bennie Thompson, chairman of the Select Committee to investigate the J6 attack," says via UPS next day air. UPS. Now, dear Chairman Thompson, they want to make sure it got there. Now, they say, "As you may be aware, I am conducting," says Fani, "a criminal investigation of possible attempts to illegally interfere with the administrations of Georgia's 2020 general election. And through news reports," says Fani, "we are aware that your committee has interviewed witnesses relevant to our investigation," saying, "We understand from the same reports that your committee's investigators may have collected records that are in fact relevant to our investigation." So Fani says, "Please accept this letter as an official request from me to access records that may be relevant to our criminal investigation." Yeah, that's literally, can I copy your homework? Come on, man. Come on. Just let me see answers, 15 through 20. Come on. That's it, man. I don't want to do my own homework, man. I hate math class. Come on. Yeah. Now, those records include but are not limited to recordings and transcripts of witness interviews and depositions, electronic and print records of communication, and records of travel. So she wants it all. And as we've known here, we have questions about where the recordings actually went. Apparently, they are gone. Copy and paste prosecutors. Typical. She says, "It may well be most efficient for your staff and effective for our understanding, for my staff, for me to meet with your investigators in person." And she wants to go to Washington and hang out with Liz. "We are able to travel to Washington anytime between January and February. We'll do our best to accommodate the schedule of the committee." She's like, "We're going to Washington. Pack your bags." Now, thank you for your consideration of this request. You may contact me directly. Via her personal cell phone, or if that's her personal business cell phone, her personal office phone, right? It's kind of what I think you'd call that. When you call that, my mobile is. Personal's a little intimate, isn't it? Personal's kind of like, "Hey, anytime, Benny, what's up, Benny? Text me, hang out with me, man. What's going on? You want to go get a cup of Joe?" I don't know what she's saying. I don't know what they're up to, what they're into. Probably talking about insurrections, I guess. But it's personal, very curious. And they want to go travel there in person, travel to Washington. So, all right. Thank you for your consideration. Here's my email. We want to know what's in those records. And so hopefully Congress subpoenas these phone records. They should form their own stupid select committee, get all the same records. Go to Verizon, go to AT&T, and take a look at those records. What was that? Did Benny send her, a bonus torso photo or something? I don't know, man. These anti-Trumpers are weird. And so my deputy executive assistant may be reached at that number, and that's kind of more in line with what we're talking about, and via email at that. That's more in alignment. So I don't know if it's office cell or personal cell. I have no idea. But, Fani and Benny, that's kind of like a sitcom or something. So, all right. So this is the House of Representatives Committee on the Judiciary sending this over. And what's so curious about all this, right, is these people were colluding together. I think this is all part of a massive operation, honestly, that we're witnessing unfold, which is just to sideline Donald Trump under any circumstance. No matter what they can do, they've got to stop him from taking power again. And it's wild how they're willing to contort all of the old mechanisms of our justice system in order to get it done. Although maybe they wanted those to go anyways, to be honest with you. A functional justice system is a big impediment towards a tyrannical overtaking of any country. And so if you can get rid of it, yeah, you kind of get rid of Trump and you shatter the justice system, and you have half the country that's very excited about doing it, right? You have the Democrats who are like, yeah, he's a tyrant. He's going to kill us. So they might be getting a twofer on this. We'll see. Of course, we're not going to let that happen. But we're watching what happened, the collusion. And as I explained at the outset of this segment, it was by design, okay? Liz Cheney just like was a Hoover vacuum, just sucking up all the data, all the information from everywhere under threat of legislative scrutiny, under penalty of Congress. How dare you violate Congress? And so she was just, without any due process, without any judicial oversight, without any equal protection of the law or any presumption of innocence, she cobbled together a total sham show trial hearing, sold it to many people in the media who still have insurrection nightmares, waking up, in cold sweats. And now she's saying a lot of language that is very provocative, okay? We're hearing in Trump's cases, from Chutkin and from Engoron, Areola, screaming about every Trump statement, every Trump truth is somehow problematic towards their staff, towards their operation of their courts, right? It's a threat towards the Engoron's GF, his Allison Greenfield, the GF, and so on and so forth. It is threats and voicemails and all the things. But what's so curious about this is Trump is gagged, okay? He can't comment on just the very basic maneuvers that are happening in our system about the justice system, saying that these love notes between Engoron and his Greenfield are very strange. But people like Liz Cheney, well, maybe a witness in the government's case, we don't even know who their witnesses are. She was a congresswoman at the time. She was a part of this investigation. She knows a lot of material about what was happening there. And so maybe she's a witness. And so this woman, Trump can't say anything. Trump's gagged. He's muzzled. But this woman and this guy here, Mark Esper, they can go on TV and say that Trump is literally going to start shooting people in the street, okay? Trump is going to terminate the Constitution. They're going to say all this type of stuff. And I think that they're, getting really, really close to almost kind of like they wouldn't be upset about it. If something like happened, something kind of problematic happened. It makes me sick to even like think about it, but they're agitating, right? Agitating. And it's like, what are they doing here? Why are they saying Trump is going to start shooting people in the streets? Kind of strange. Now, what's so funny about this is Donald Trump came out and he left this comment hang. And man, there is some serious reaction to this comment. And we're going to go through it because Trump said, I'm not going to be a dictator except for day one. I want to go through this clip because there is a lot of reaction to this. In fact, I had a Politico story queued up that said the following, that this remark, the one that we're about to hear, is causing some serious jolts throughout the 2024 campaign. Insurrection and the dictator remark. And it's going to be testing the GOP rivals on the day of the debate, which is taking place later. So Sean Hannity, they said, was trying to throw Donald Trump a life vest. And I'm not so sure about that. I think it was one of the more ridiculous questions I've heard. But at a town hall on the eve of this, Trump got asked this question, and the timing is very significant. Apparently, there are 4 remaining challengers. They're going to go debate this. A lot of people are concerned about it. They said, oh my gosh, Joe Biden said, see, Trump's not even hiding it anymore. He is going to be a dictator. He is going to seize power. He is going to shoot somebody in the middle of 5th Street. Remember that comment? And all the things. So they're having a meltdown over it. And we're going to play it. And then, of course, we'll do some review. Here is Trump saying, I'm only going to be a dictator on day one.
Issue, though, because the media has been focused on this and attacking you. Under no circumstances, you are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
for?
He's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border and I want to drill.
That's
drill,
not. That's
drill.
That's not.
No, no.
That's not retribution.
I'm going to be. He keeps. We love this guy. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border, and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator,
so that sounds to me like you're going back to the policies when you were president.
That's
all right.
Exactly.
Okay, so Hannity's having a little bit of an aneurysm right there. He's going into some serious cope mode, and he asks one of the most asinine questions ever. Why is he even validating this in the first place? Okay, Trump acting as a tyrant or a dictator. Okay, Trump didn't come into office and weaponize the FBI and the DOJ against his political opponents. A lot of people wanted him to, by the way. A lot of people said that he should go in there and lock Hillary up. Remember, lock her up. Remember all that stuff? He didn't do it. And he left the White House. And the country was in a lot better shape. The tyrannical tendencies that the Democrats are seeding into people's brains right now are asinine. They're totally disconnected from reality. They just have cobbled together and almost hypnotized their portion of the population into thinking the January 6th and the imagery we saw there with some flags and a bunch of MAGA hats and Trump flags all over the place, which I still think were largely, they're, orchestrated by feds. We had 50 feds in the Proud Boys trial, hundreds more. Many have alleged, even Congress people like Clay Higgins have said that. So all of this was just a massive psyop. And now every time Trump comes out and says anything, there's already this laid out premise, this foundation that he is this tyrant or something like that. He's got no tyrannical tendencies relative to what the Democratic Party has done. Let's think about what they've done. They have weaponized the entire DOJ to go after thousands now, over 1,000 plus Americans for protesting, for rioting on January 6th, calling them insurrectionists, charging them with obstruction crimes and impeding police, right? And some of the ones that are there for assault are minor scrapes and bruises, stuff that is a scale minuscule to the BLM Summer of Love that this entire country witnessed. And I mean that not only in terms of damages and injuries, but monetary damages, right? Couple $1 million at the Capitol, none of which I endorse, but BLM was billions of dollars of burnt down buildings. They torched the whole police precinct down there in Minneapolis. So it's totally different scale. FBI raiding Trump's house, right? We're seeing classified documents problems with Joe Biden, but Trump gets indicted for it. Hillary had classified documents, no problems for her. So the whole situation, the tyranny comes from their party. 234 years of historical precedent shattered because they don't want this guy to win again. And Hannity, for all his, rationality, thinks here that this is a good question. You're not going to be a dictator. Come on, man. Hannity, he can pick up the same tools that they leave behind. This is what we've been saying for years here. If the Democrats want to cross this bridge, if they want to use this tool, we decided that we're not going to use swords at each other in American politics because we don't really want to knife the country and bleed out together. But what we were using were pool noodles. Okay, we hit you hard. Yeah, maybe it hurts a little bit, but that's fine. Now we got swords, right? If the Democrats are going to be swinging at the right with swords, well, the Republicans are going to pick it back up, right? And they're going to use the same tools. And I don't mean that, in a violent manner. I just mean it's the death of the judicial system. It's the death of the country when you start hacking each other to bits. But if the Democrats are going to use those tools, right, the vernacular is if they're going to kick you in the nads, if they're going to hit you below the belt, the other side is now going to use that same mechanism, that same tool against them. And if you're going to sit here and say that Trump shouldn't undo and reverse everything that the DOJ has done, Trump shouldn't undo and reverse everything the FBI has done, that's crazy, man. That's why we want to vote for this guy. So he does that. Yeah, go prosecute all these people, man. They prosecuted 1,000 Trump Republican people calling MAGA extremists from Biden's gates of hell speech. Okay, that's fine. Got to go back, go prosecute 1,000 Democrats, right? If they're going to go, and Sean Hannity got his text messages subpoenaed by Liz Cheney, okay? And he's going to sit here and worry about Trump being a dictator? Are you kidding me, bro? What a ridiculous question. So he asks Trump that, and quite frankly, I hope Trump does use the same tools. Absolutely. It's a problem for America, and what I would hope is Trump would be sort of like George Washington, use that power and then get rid of it. Say, we're done with this, right? And then turn the country back to norms. One can hope and dream, but that's the point. Once you cross this bridge, everybody gets to use it, and it's the downfall of the country. And unfortunately, the Democrats are the people who started it. And so here is Liz Cheney now using very problematic language saying that Trump is going to come here and end the entire country, unravel the Constitution. And she gets to say this stuff while Trump is being gagged in two different cases, in the J6 case out of Washington and out of New York, both of which are working their way through appeals right now.
The threat is exactly what you've laid out. The threat is that, this is a man that we don't have to guess what he would do. And in some ways, the extreme nature of the claims that he's making, of the lies he's telling, of the calling for General Milley to be executed, those things are so extreme that what happens sometimes in our body politic is people ignore it. People say, well, that's just him. I think that the challenge that we're facing now is very clearly understanding and recognizing he means what he says. The people who invaded the Capitol, frankly, on January 6th, you can look at scores of those defendants who have said specifically, we came because he told us to come. He told us to do this. He knows that people will follow his instructions. And if he's elected again, those guardrails, those individuals, for example, who stopped him won't be there. And think about what it means to have a president who won't enforce the rulings of the courts.
It's insane.
It will be the unraveling of our constitutional system.
Joe Biden just basically ignored the courts, right? He just does what he wants with student loans and other things. We've already seen that. He said, well, we're just going to do this. What's your legal basis to do it? We'll figure it out. They just do it, and then they pay for it after the fact. We've already literally seen that from them.
Every time people hear my former Republican colleagues talking about the weaponization of the Justice Department, I really urge them to stop and think about what that is. That's Republicans attempting to do Donald Trump's bidding, attacking one of the most foundational and important aspects of our republic.
It was. That's true. You guys ruined it. You wrecked it this year by going after your political opponents, and now you're trying to get everybody else to recognize how serious it is. This is how you know they're in serious trouble, okay? When she she is telling you that you have to think, we got to get people to believe that we're legitimate, that's a problem, right? If the case was legitimate, the case would speak for itself. Like, you don't have to go and validate the prosecution of a murderer, right? A lot of people, for example, take the Kohberger case or something like that, right? You don't hear the cops coming out here and saying, well, our prosecution is really needed here because there's dead girls here and dead people. It's all just obvious, right? Everybody just knows that. Like, okay, yeah, thank you. Nice work keeping our neighborhood safe. Thank you for that. When you have to come and justify your prosecution, man, you are already behind the ball. You're way behind. And we've got two things happening here. We've got the court of law, which in my opinion, in at least one jurisdiction is a total joke and a sham. But in the court of public opinion, which is really what this is about, they are scraping the bottom. They're having a difficult time. So that's Liz Cheney. Now, her language is getting very aggressive. People need to take seriously and literally that he is going to terminate the Constitution, unravel our democracy. It's a risk we cannot take. So what are you going to do? Terminate the Constitution? Unravel our democracy? Okay, if Trump says stuff like this, just reverse this and put Judge Engeron in here, or Allison Greenfield, or anyone else, right? Letitia James, or Judge Chutkan. You start putting Jack Smith in here, Molly Gaston. Trump says this. Trump posts Molly Gaston, prosecutor from the DOJ who's got a long history of anti-Trump bias even before January 6th. Molly, Trump says, is unraveling our democracy and going to terminate our Constitution by imprisoning me. Trump says it's a risk we can't take. What if Trump said that? It's a risk we can't take to allow Molly or deranged thug Jack Smith. They would go friggin' from the rooftops, man. But Liz Cheney can say it about Trump, and Trump can't really comment on it because she might be a potential witness in the January 6th case. That's what kind of a sham this is. Here is Liz.
That whatever you do, whatever you think about, the possibilities that Donald Trump might present, he's not an acceptable option. He's not an acceptable alternative. I hope that he is defeated in the primary.
But what?
But if he's not, we have to defeat him in the general.
Okay.
And people need to take seriously and literally what he's saying, which is that he would, in fact, unravel our democracy, potentially terminate the Constitution.
Pretty aggravated. It's a risk we can't take. I don't know what that means. Maybe something might happen. Hopefully not, but that's where this is going. And if Trump said that, man, he'd be indicted again for it. So here's the last clip. This one came out from Trump's former Secretary of Defense. His name is Mark Esper. Now, this is what this guy is saying. And we've seen this from some of the people on The View, sort of screaming from that show that Trump was going to put people on the border and start executing people coming across. It's like, well, did he do that the first time around? No. All right. You think he's going to do that the second time? Okay. So here is this guy saying that Trump was actually suggesting shooting Americans on the street. And so if, they blame Trump for this stochastic terrorism. Trump is agitating people. Trump's causing people to get out there and get violent. What kind of language is this from these people? Very irresponsible, almost insurrectionary, isn't it? Here is Mark Esper, so-called.
Eventually it culminated, but the long break, simmering break between he and myself in June of 2020 when he wanted to deploy active duty troops on the street of Washington, D.C. and suggested actually that we shoot Americans in the street. So, that's kind of more what you'll see, this very hyper-aggressive behavior and this, willingness to flaunt norms and rules, if you will.
Yeah, so Trump's just going to shoot people in the streets is what this guy's saying. So, all right, that's the gist of it. So, all right, now that is a wild clip. I guess that guy's living in a different reality than the rest of us. But all right, that is what we've got. Liz Cheney and others really escalating the rhetoric. A lot of the language getting very, very problematic there. And we can see here that we'll be continuing to cover this, my friends. We'll see what Fani Willis says in response to Jim Jordan's request, and we'll see what Liz Cheney says in response as well. We'll be here continuing to cover this and more. Thank you for subscribing, my friends. Thank you for joining us wherever it is you're watching this, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.